and partly because we are motivated, we're wired as human beings, as in many ways, everything in nature is wired in the direction of pleasure, of enjoyment. Even when we're going through a difficult time, we still have the memory of pleasure and the memory of enjoyment, and we're kind of looking at some point toward the experience of pleasure, even when we're temporarily not specifically enjoying things. So pleasure is fundamental, really, to life. And the sole question associated with kama is, what do I want? What do I long for that would give me joy, give me pleasure? Once our basic survival needs are in place through artha, once we've established our appropriate material resources and we're feeling safe and comfortable, we want to expand our enjoyment and look for significant others with whom to share pleasure. And I was just saying, we are hardwired for pleasure and for harmony and enjoyment. And we can see this everywhere in nature. Everywhere in nature. Nature is, in many ways, we were saying yesterday, a great healer, but it's also a great teacher, because it teaches us about harmony. It teaches us about beauty. It teaches us about balance. And well, maybe we should take a look at that little video.
Do you find yourself longing for the apocalypse? I did. I was looking for a reason to live. Hi. Are you feeling tired, irritable, stressed out? Well, you might consider nature.
From the people that brought you Getting Outside comes prescription strength Nature, a non-harmful medication shown to relieve the crippling symptoms of modern life.
Nature's recommended for humans of all ages, and it's great for pets too.
Nature can reduce cynicism, meaninglessness, anal retentiveness, and murderous rage. In clinical studies, Nature is proven to decrease work-induced catatonia.
Caution. Nature may cause you to slow down, quit your job, or seriously consider what the you're doing with your life.
If you are overly cynical, jaded, or emotionally numb, you may need to increase your dose of Nature. Do you have trouble being even mildly uncomfortable? Nature may not be right for you. Side effects may include spontaneous euphoria, taking yourself less seriously, and being in a good mood for no apparent reason.
So ask your doctor if nature is right for you.
Great. Let's see. Well, we can ask ourselves that question. Is nature right for us? Nature is who we really are, and that's why alignment with nature, spending time in nature reminds us of that and of our connection to all and everything else. And, much of our maladies, our modern maladies, are because we temporarily somehow believe we're separate from one another, separate from our extended body, the body of nature, and even the body of the cosmos. So I think when we are feeling pleasure, when we're feeling enjoyment, when we're relaxed and feeling safe and expanding our enjoyment, that's when we begin to open and kind of remember our connection with the something bigger. And ultimately, the something bigger is consciousness itself. So, pursuit of satisfaction or pleasure in some way is underneath all of our actions. We're always hoping to get to a place where we can feel enjoyment again. It's natural for us to do that. And there's some really good reasons for it, as we'll see. Natural desire we have to share enjoyment with significant others. So kama is a lot about our relationships. And of course, psychological values are often much related to the people in our lives and how well we get along with them, how the people that we feel love for, and the people that we feel love us and care for us and hold us as significant. So this is very much fundamental. I've been sort of retreating on a ranch up above Santa Barbara for the last, 6-8 months. Through some good karma, good fortune, I was invited to just go and stay there, 136 acres, nobody there, except the creatures and me. And so I've had a lot of opportunity to observe the creatures, the wild creatures, and I see all kinds of wild creatures. I see lots of deer wandering around and out my window all the time, and I see plenty of birds. I see crows and hawks, and even I've seen a golden eagle out there. I've seen bobcats and seen foxes. And so in observing some of these creatures, I've been observing their relationships with one another. And especially, I noticed one day this family of foxes that was just right outside my window. And they didn't see me, but they feel safe there on this ranch. And it was two little kits, little baby foxes, and they were just frolicking around, chasing each other. I mean, just pure joy in their relationship, these two little sibling foxes. And the mother was just sitting there watching them, and you could see she just was so content. And the father was sort of kind of wandering around, looking a little bit nervous. And he finally took off, and I was watching them, and it wasn't very long before he comes back with a squirrel in his mouth, one of those ground squirrels in his mouth. There are plenty of ground squirrels too. That's another creature I watch out there, and they burrow down in their holes like gophers. And he comes back with a prize, for his beloved, his spouse. And she gets up, and you could see she was so excited. She runs over and she grabs that squirrel out of his mouth and goes back and, because she's sort of there with the kits. And it was such a joyful scene. I mean, I just felt so privileged to just be able to watch this little family. And I was thinking to myself, how does this happen? How do these relationships occur so naturally, even among the creatures around us? Same with the deer. Mostly the mother deer and the little baby fawns, at the beginning of the summer, and watching them grow. And they always stay together. And they're always very, sensitive when you come around. But they've kind of gotten to know me, so they don't run away. They feel safe. They know I'm not going to be any danger to them. And I see this over and over and over again, to observe these creatures together and seeing the nature and seeing their relationships and the natural enjoyment that they take in those relationships. And it reminds me, of the importance of our relationships together and how important it is that we have harmony in our relationships. And of course, again, this goes back to Venus, the planet of love and romance. Deepak was talking about romance last night. I loved what he said about romance, entanglement of our karmic stories. That really gave me something to think about. But the impulse for union, the impulse for connection and affection and of course sexuality is it's inherent in all of us and in every species. Pleasure, sensuality, intimacy, beauty, harmony, love, again, is associated with Venus. Those things bring delight and enjoyment to ourselves and to others. And also, as I was saying, our primary relationships, our parents, our siblings, our extended family, our friendships, groups, and associations, and intimate partnerships in general, sexuality, marriage, all of these things are very much associated with kama. And so, we do spend a lot of time thinking about relationship. And when I'm doing counseling with people, a lot of times that's a really important question. Either I'm having challenges in my relationship. What can I do? Sometimes we'll look at the charts together, which is very revealing. Or sometimes they're wondering, well, when am I going to find my partner? When am I going to find someone with whom I can be intimate, with whom I can share pleasure? So it is one of those inquiries deep down that drives us, that motivates us. You know, as I said, once we're fairly stable in our survival needs and basic ability to support ourselves. So dharma, you know, we say is how may I be significant? How can I use my talents, gifts, and abilities in the world? Artha is how will I support myself? Very important, fundamental concern. And then we move from there into, and even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, we move from basic survival into, you know, the psychological part where we're seeking appropriate, intimate partnerships. And as I was saying before, there are reasons why we seek pleasure. Because, and I tell you, in thinking about this subject, you know, it made me really want to inquire more and deeply into endocrinology. And of course, Deepak was trained, board certified as an endocrinologist. I thought, what a fascinating thing to study, you know, all the hormones that motivate us. So among the happy hormones that we know about, we have dopamine, serotonin. Deepak mentioned last night, you know, that 80% of it is made in the microbiome. Oxytocin, you know, the often called the cuddle hormone. You know, when we cuddle with our pets, our animals, and certainly with our babies, our children, our loved ones, you know, that secretes oxytocin. And endorphins. These are among the pleasure hormones that get triggered whenever we feel good. And when they are released, they make us feel good. So we like that. We like that fix in a way. And it's natural for us to focus on various things, various stimuli that trigger these neurotransmitters. Dopamine motivates us to act on our goals and needs and our desires. And that gives reinforcement of pleasure when we achieve those goals, when we feel satisfaction and we feel a sense of accomplishment. We have secretions of dopamine. When dopamine's low, we can experience kind of lethargy, procrastination, even self-doubt, and lack of enthusiasm. Like that slug we saw the other day up there. He didn't look very enthusiastic. Needs a little dopamine. So setting even small goals and celebrating our achieving those goals, celebrating the happiness we feel when we fulfill those goals, increases the levels of dopamine. Serotonin, as Deepak mentions, the hormone that flows when we feel significant and important. So, there are other associations with serotonin, but when it's at low levels, we feel kind of disappointed, depressed, alone. We don't feel significant. We don't feel that we're part of something bigger, even part of a relationship. So meaningful, significant relationship can increase serotonin. And again, we don't think about this so much when we're, pursuing or interested in having a relationship. But these are sort of some of the underlying factors that actually are present in our direct experience. Exposure to the sun or sipping some coffee can boost the production of both vitamin D and serotonin. And we talked yesterday about practicing gratitude, which makes us feel valued and valuable. When we feel all of the things that we have right now, and we begin to feel abundant and our heart expands, there can also be this increase in levels of serotonin. So serotonin plays a role in mood, emotions, appetite, and digestion. It's very important for our continued healthy living. And as a precursor for melatonin, it helps regulate sleep-wake cycles and our own internal clock, body clock. Oxytocin increases levels of or feelings of intimacy, and it helps us to build trust together with another, even with a pet, and helps in the development of healthy relationships, and and these relationships help secrete good levels of oxytocin, and it feels good. We kind of know that feeling when oxytocin is being secreted. Oxytocin is released when mothers breastfeed their babies, and also during childbirth itself. Men have no idea how women can, how they can do that. It's completely not in our realm of understanding. But part of it is there are these extraordinary secretions of hormones and oxytocin significant among them during childbirth. It helps to create strong bonds and to improve our social relationships. So when we're in alignment with a group, people that we feel comfortable with, safe with, we feel they have kind of our backs, we have their backs, we sort of have common values, much like here, and that's why I was saying at the beginning of the retreat, after a period of time of even just spending time in silence together, we let go of a lot of our defense mechanisms, our tendency to want to be kind of on guard. We just feel safe and we feel connected. And that feeling of connection can bring about the release of oxytocin, very spontaneously, to where we'll just look at someone, we just feel, we feel love for that person. Also, it is released when someone receives a gift sometimes. We feel that that significance, being seen with significance by someone when they give us a gift. As I mentioned, it's called the cuddle hormone, and it's produced during affectionate touch. Affectionate touch. And giving and receiving of hugs can keep cardiovascular stress minimized and may actually improve our immune system. We've all seen that video that went so viral when that guy was just giving hugs to everybody that came up. You just watching it made you feel good. And during intercourse, of course, oxytocin hormone is released for both men and women while having orgasm. Speaking of which, let's see, endorphins, we want to talk about those. Endorphins are released in... Tell what I'm thinking about. And endorphins are released in response to sort of help balance stress. We'll get there. In response to stress and anxiety, in order to alleviate pain. So endorphins are kind of pain help to pacify pain, and act as an analgesic or even a sedative that reduces the perception of pain. Of course, we all love, many of us love, dark chocolate, which actually does release endorphins also. It's a good medicine sometimes. Endorphin can reduce pain, as we said, and as they do, and oh, by the way, and they're released when a person laughs. That's why we feel good when we have a good belly laugh, or when someone points out something that really strikes us funny, and we just let go. There's something about a release of endorphins when we have that experience of laughter. And even some scented oils or incense of certain types can also increase the release of endorphins. And this is an interesting detail because gizmos, which we've talked a little bit about, can increase some release of pleasure hormones through things like, for example, push button shopping. We're on our computer, we see a picture of something that looks in the moment like it would please us. Boom, we push the button, and we go, oh, good, that thing's coming to me now. And so there is that release of some hormones as a result, endorphins. News doesn't often release pleasure hormones, I have to say. But sometimes, when we hear good news, when we know of something that's good news, we begin to feel endorphins. We feel encouraged. Sometimes social media, which is one of the reasons it can become so addictive, when we feel that we're connected with this big, massive group of people somewhere, can increase endorphins. Online dating, well, I'm not so sure how that increases endorphins, but maybe it does. I thought about this a lot before I put that on there, and I thought, well, sometimes just the imagination of connecting with this person that you don't know yet, but you're feeling like because they're there and they're smiling at you on your screen, there may be some potential for a connection. So that can be there. Of course, pornography, unfortunately, does release a lot of these pleasure hormones. And the problem is that pornography, it can become addictive, just like social media, just like, push-button shopping can become addictive. But the problem is that any of these things, they kind of hamper our pursuit of more authentic pleasures, and certainly authentic relating, authentic affection, and even authentic sexuality. And therefore, because it's so immediate, pornography, for example, is, we can go there. We don't have to go through what we might perceive as the ritual of dating and getting to know and whatever, all the traditional things of developing intimacy with another person. As they say, intimacy is into me you see. So when we're actually, developing healthy relationships, we're taking time to get to know the person, to see, is this someone I can actually trust to be myself with? And are they someone with whom I can hold space for them to be themselves? So feelings of safety, have to take time to develop. That's why some of these immediate kind of hookup websites are so, confounding to me. You just see someone who wants to, how does that happen? I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old guy. Old school, that's what I meant, old school. I'm not old. I told all my friends on a recent birthday, I am infinite, and so are you. We don't have to identify with a number anymore. What's the point, really? So, in any case, so we want to be mindful of what are these happy hormones? How are they released and under what circumstances? So, of course, sexuality, as we pointed out, very strong and compelling trigger for hormone secretion. Dopamine is released, creating a state of tension and focus, clear focus. Norepinephrine is released, creating alertness in sexuality. And during orgasm, as we mentioned, oxytocin and vasopressin are released, which contribute to the emotional bonding and also brings about continued arousal for a partner with whom we've had that experience. So someone that, we have good chemistry with, and when we see them, we feel that chemistry arise. Opiates are released, giving a sense of euphoria and release. So, certainly that's why sexuality is such a compelling thing. Nature provides this in order to procreate and to perpetuate our species, and every species in some way is driven by these hormones. And serotonin is released after climax, creating a sense of calmness, well-being, and satisfaction. It's interesting how, much of what we want, speaking of what do I want, much of what we want and crave, it seems like whenever we get it, even sexuality, when we get it, whatever the thing we want is, once we get it, we relax. We go, oh, thank God, I've got that thing now. And it seems kind of backwards to me in a way, that in a way, why not learn to relax first? Why not learn to relax first? And not be so, and of course, this is the whole point of object referral consciousness, that we associate with things outside of ourselves as that is going to make me feel a certain way. That's going to help me secrete these happy hormones. Well, of course, we know, and of course, the Chopra Foundation has done many studies on, all the hormones that are released during meditation, during moments of self-referral awareness, feeling connected to ourselves and to the one consciousness. All of the fulfillment of all of these hormones come, and even other hormones, as the one he mentioned the other night, I think he said is anandatine, which I looked for and couldn't find on the internet, so I'll have to ask him about that. So pleasure, and here's where we want to look at pleasure versus happiness, because pleasure is something that we've seen here is triggered by experience much of the time. However, when I'm talking about self-referral experience, we're talking more about the realm of happiness, because happiness is our nature. It is our true essential nature. And much of our pursuit of pleasure, as I said, is external, object referral. And when we exclusively pursue pleasure, especially out of alignment with Dharma, when we're not in alignment with a sense of purpose, when we don't feel fulfillment in our actual Dharma, we may look for that fulfillment in more and more and more pleasure, which eventually can lead us to addiction. It blinds us to the memory of who we are. We give our power away to something outside of ourselves. Deepak spoke a little bit about it last night, about addiction. And yes, I like the way it's a compassionate thing to say that addiction really at the base is looking for, a spiritual experience. But again, why not look for the spiritual experience first, not in things outside of ourselves, because it's never going to be ultimately found there. So happiness, as I said, is our true nature, and it is inherent. And this is why developing self-referral awareness helps us to find that fulfillment in who we are. Happiness is there when we are in alignment with our true nature. So that's in some ways why Dharma is always the first of the Purusharthas. Because true happiness can really only be found when we're in alignment with our nature and when we're feeling that we're contributing in a meaningful way to the whole. So alignment with Dharma brings happiness. And our desires are actually, this is very important, that has really influenced my thinking a lot lately, that most of our desires are not as personal as we think. They're actually the desires of nature expressed through us. And if we can relax our attachment to the outcome, relax our trying to micromanage things in life in order to fulfill those desires, if we relax, nature will fulfill its own desires. This is something that's really worth reflecting on. And of course, it goes directly to the law of intention and desire that Deepak talks about in the 7 spiritual laws. When we have a desire, and we honor the desire because the desire is actually nature. So we honor the desire. Especially if it's an evolutionary desire, we want to consider that. But then surrender and relinquish our attachment. As Deepak says, allow the universe to handle the details. And it's real magic when we start to do this. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience. When you do let go, and that exercise for manifestation I talked about yesterday, when we do fully let go of our attachment to how and when our desire will be realized, and we completely turn it over. Not my will, but thy will be done. And in those instances, a lot of times things happen much more quickly than we could have expected if we're trying to work out all the details. It's really, I think, an important thing to begin to awaken to, and of course we do it, when we meditate. We put the gear shift into neutral, and we just allow everything to be as it is. And in many ways, just in that experience of meditation, our desires, nature is organizing the fulfillment of our desires without our doing anything about it. As I said, intimacy, into me you see. And I like that expression because I think it really is what we want in our relationships. We want to feel safe enough with another person that we can be ourselves, that we don't have to do a song and dance to get their attention, to hold their attention, to get their validation, to, and we seek that. I think we've sought that even from the time we were little babies. When we looked at our mother and we saw her mother's eyes looking down at us with love, and we felt her caress, and we felt safe. And of course, those kinds of imprintings for little children are so important, as I said the other day, in helping us to feel safe in the world as we move out. But that intimacy that we experience with mother, we often, that's where the mistake of the intellect can also begin for us, called pragya parad in Ayurveda, which means that we start to have the belief that somehow fulfillment or validation or love or somehow completeness is out there. And of course, ideally, as we mature, if we do feel secure in life when we go into life, hopefully we're already beginning to feel that fulfillment as we are. We feel safe and we feel balanced in ourselves, and we're not craving that from another person. So it's a fine line, we certainly want to have the positive attention of another person, but I think this idea of intimacy is something to contemplate. What does that really mean in relationship? And can we be fully relaxed with another person such that we don't have to manipulate the situation. We can just be accepted for who we are. And that feels good, That's when all those hormones I was speaking about are naturally begin to become secreted. So as I said, this aligns with the law of intention and desire, which Deepak says, inherent in every intention and desire is actually the mechanics for its fulfillment, which means nature will fulfill its own desires. Intention and desire in the field of pure potentiality, which of course is what we live in and what everything exists in, intention and desire have infinite organizing power. And when we introduce an intention into the fertile ground of pure potentiality, and we put this infinite organizing power to work for us when we allow it to do so, when we get out of the way. So really important. I like this quote very much. He who does not desire pleasure will not seek to enrich himself. Without desires, neither does a man desire to fulfill his duty. So even in the area of dharma, there is a desire for some pleasure and fulfillment. This is part of our internal guidance system. The merchant, the laborer, the gods themselves act only if their actions are linked to some satisfaction. And this comes directly from the Mahabharata, one of the great Upanishads. So here's some inquiries I'd like you to reflect on for a little bit, maybe just if you feel like doing some journaling around these, around kama. First one is, and I'll leave these up if you want to copy them down. What things in my life do I most enjoy? And maybe think about them in some priority, some list of in order of priority. Just, what things in my life do I most enjoy? I think if you're observing yourself, you'll notice just having that inquiry, there's some subtle secretion of some pleasure hormone that takes place when we think about what do I really most enjoy in my life, right? And so sometimes it's a helpful inquiry. And who in my life do I most enjoy sharing pleasures with? And maybe why is that? Why is that? Why does that happen with those people, those individuals? Another inquiry around kama, what pleasures do I seek in my life that may support my dharma? What pleasures do I seek that may support my dharma? And what pleasures do I seek that may pull me away at times from a sense of purpose? What pleasures may be out of alignment with Dharma? And even what pleasures am I addicted to? And I think if we're honest, we're all kind of addicted to something at different times. And as Deepak mentioned last night. And of course, some things are more compelling and more destabilizing than others. But this is a useful inquiry. What pleasures am I addicted to? And what would my life be like without those pleasures? This is a really good inquiry. Just to imagine, what would, if we can establish what pleasures I may be addicted to, to imagine what my life would be like if I let go of those or without those addictions, those pleasures, those addictive pleasures. I mean, I tell you in all honesty, and I think this happens especially for Pitta people, the visual stimulation of screens can be very compelling because it sort of stimulates the hypothalamus and the pituitary and even the pineal. I mean, light. We live on light, but somehow this concentrated light of these screens from the gizmos, it creates this kind of surge of some of these neurohormones. And, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience, especially if you live alone. When the sun goes down, there's no more light out there, and you're starting to feel like, oh, I'm alone. And you turn on the TV, Netflix or whatever, Amazon, whatever, you start. And I've observed in myself, that can become a real addiction after a while. You'll take some comfort, you'll take some distraction, maybe from that experience of aloneness, or even what we might think of as loneliness, which is actually a very important thing and very important part of retreat, because when we're not speaking and we're not relating so much to other people, we may have to actually confront my aloneness. What does that mean to feel alone? This is a very important opportunity, can be very rich, to feel into what does it mean to feel alone or feel lonely? Why am I afraid to feel alone? Or why am I afraid to, why do I distract myself so much from being alone? And of course, the truth is we're never alone because we're all part of one consciousness. That's the truth. That is the truth. But when we go into the story of, oh, poor me, or I'm not connected to someone that causes me to feel significant, or I'm not being validated by another person, that doesn't immediately feel good. But inquiring into that, what am I feeling? What am I actually feeling? What is the feeling when we actually go into loneliness? Where in my body do I feel it? This can be a real discovery. And when I inquire into this feeling, whatever it is, how old do I feel? Because all of us at one time as children may have felt abandoned or not important to significant others, parents or friends or something like that. And we were confronted, or we didn't have the tools to deal with that at the time, or the experience, or anybody to help us. And we were left with a difficult emotion, something like fear. Will I die if I'm not attended to by someone else, if I'm not loved? There's actually that feeling of I could die, this anxiety of being alone. So when we look into that and we see that we actually see that version of ourselves, that younger version of ourselves, having that experience, and we see it from our perspective now, all we can feel is compassion for that poor little boy or girl who, in that moment, they were doing the best they could. And whatever conclusion we drew about ourselves in those moments of crisis, those moments where we were stuck with this emotion, and where we covered it up with some conclusion, like, I must not be worthy, I must not be good enough, I must not be whatever. Inquire into these emotions. You will see yourself as a little child, and you will see where some of these core beliefs really developed for each of us. We all have done this. So by seeing that little child and seeing how they were trying to cope with this very difficult emotion, all we can feel is compassion. And when we feel that compassion for ourselves, that is the beginning of healing and transformation. It's what we have to do. We have to learn to do this for ourselves. This is a very big part of self-referral, developing self-referral awareness. So do experiment with this, especially, on retreat. If at times you do feel alone, you feel disconnected from significance, what is the feeling? Where in my body do I feel it? How old do I feel? You'll be surprised. And when you see that younger version of yourself and you start to feel that compassion, it's amazing how that, whatever the old pattern around that, it starts to dispel. It starts to lift. So I hope that you will, as I said the other day, consider these purusharthas. And we're going to talk about moksha tomorrow, but consider in any moment, what, and not that we're trying to be too much in our head about this, but just consider, what are the underlying motivations when I have a thought or a feeling or a desire for something. And of course, it could be a very simple desire to, I'm hungry. I want to go have some food, some lunch, a very compelling desire for us. It can to take us over, the desire for nourishment, very important desire, fundamental to every living organism. But we can observe that in terms of, okay, this is more in alignment with artha. I'm wanting to acquire the means by which I can continue, by which I can continue to ideally live my purpose, whatever that may be, and however that may be. And in the moments of self-reflection, we can also, inquire about, what is Dharma now? What does it mean? As I said, it's not necessarily a fixed thing. It can be, and it really is, a state of being. How can I help? That inquiry is a very powerful inquiry. And in terms of karma, when we're yearning for connection, we're yearning for a relationship with a significant other, we're wanting to experience intimacy. Very, very important to observe this. See, okay, there's this desire, this purushartha of kama. How can I observe this in myself? And really, for all of these purusharthas, we can have compassion for ourselves because we realize that we're all motivated by one or another of these four things, and actually all of these four things all the time in greater or lesser proportion. I promise you, this is a huge teaching from the Vedic tradition. Huge teaching. If you begin to incorporate it into your life and to your personal inquiries, it opens us up in ways maybe that we haven't experienced before. And we can really start to feel that compassion for others too, because we recognize everybody is governed in some way by these four purusharthas. So, here we are. And I really honor you for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste. So